Pride Month, and it's not quite as cool as it used to be. The Supreme Court stands up for a representative republic again. Imagine that. And Democrats still trying to find a way forward for the fall. It's Wednesday, June 3rd, and this is news and commentary from America's Heartland. You're watching Heartlander News. Hi, and welcome in to another edition of Heartlander News. I'm Chris Stigall. It's been fun to watch various members of the Trump administration take to the White House press podium while Caroline Leavitt is on maternity leave. Yesterday, it was Dr. Oz's turn.
Americans out there that are suffering from a very serious ailment called Trump derangement syndrome.
I am concerned about folks who have focused their entire life energy on dislike of the president. It's disheartening to see people lost in that way, but you know, treating stupid is really hard, and then it becomes a real problem. And these folks are off. Now, GLP-1s.
He's funny and very, very talented communicator, and he's right. There is an unhealthy, unusual derangement going on, particularly as America heads toward her 250th birthday. We're supposed to be remembering what actually made this country different and better. President Trump is getting ready to celebrate that. And as we've heard, there are some people that just can't seem to deal with it because he is involved. Look, what this country introduced was something genuinely new. It was a radically different idea about the relationship between the individual and the state. For most of human history, the ruler stood above the people. Kings were the ones that granted rights. Emperors granted privileges. The government always came first. You came second. And that's if you're lucky. And of course, the founders 250 years ago completely flipped that on its head. They said every human being is born with rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that those rights do not come from the government. Government exists to protect your rights, not hand out rights. And that, of course, was revolutionary. The Declaration of Independence is what that's all about. It announced that very principle. The Constitution built the machinery behind it. Limited government, checks and balances, separation of powers, and the radical notion that legitimate government only exists with the consent of the governed. Our founders told the new country, kings do not own you, folks. You're on your own. No government owns you. You're not a subject now. You're a citizen. And that idea unleashed something extraordinary. It created the most prosperous, innovative, and opportunity-rich society this planet has ever known. Millions crossed oceans to come here. Not because we're perfect, of course, but because America offered something scarce in human history, the chance to direct your own life. And yet, here we are in 2026 getting ready to mark that milestone. And because President Trump happens to be president of the United States as we're presiding over this celebration, a bunch of entertainers are refusing to participate. They're backing out of events, announcing boycotts like they're making some brave moral stand. But what exactly is it they're protesting anyway? This isn't a celebration of a politician or a president or a political party. It's not even about the current moment. What we're celebrating, getting ready to celebrate this summer, is a celebration of the idea that free people can govern themselves. And the irony is thick enough to choke on. These performers are exercising the very freedoms the founders secured. The right to speak, of course, criticize, dissent, and get rich doing it. And by the way, even stay home if they want. Every bit of that protected by the system they're now thumbing their nose over. They got wealthy and they got famous inside this house that freedom built. And now they're treating the anniversary of that freedom like it's some partisan rally they just cannot be a part of. And that's not principled. They're being children. It's the political equivalent of refusing to go to your grandparents' anniversary party because you're mad at your cousin. The American founding is bigger than today's tribal nonsense, of course. Republicans didn't invent the Declaration. Democrats didn't write the Constitution. Those principles belong to all of us. So let these morons boycott. Let them pout. Because in this country, you're even free to be a short-sighted, ungrateful, tribal left-wing lunatic with Trump derangement syndrome. But the rest of us know what we're actually celebrating. 250 years later, America's greatest achievement is not our wealth. It's not our military. It's not even our global reach. It's that stubborn, enduring promise. Free men and women can govern themselves and run their own lives because God wanted it that way. That idea changed the world, and it's still worth celebrating loudly, proudly, and without apology. It's also worth preserving for future generations. You know, there's something deeper going on in Washington right now than just nice photos of cleaned up landmarks. When you see those old fountains running again, that reflecting pool actually sparkling again, monuments properly cared for, the work being done at the White House, more than maintenance. This is about an attitude that President Trump wants to project, cleaning and restoring. It's a metaphor. It's the simple duty of taking care of what we've been given, whether it's our Constitution, our traditions, the elderly, anything worth preserving. Civilizations don't fall apart overnight. They decay when folks stop maintaining what they were given, when gratitude fades and people start treating our traditions and our laws and our institutions and our buildings like they're disposable. It happens in cities. It happens in families, sadly. It happens in whole countries. Look, the people who built this country and ultimately went on to build Washington, D.C., where we'll celebrate this year, they weren't just thinking about their own time. They created symbols meant to last. The founders gave us the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and they expected us to guard them and pass them on intact, not bend them and rewrite them whenever they got in the way of something we wanted to do instead. And if we're being honest, for years, that very same mindset that let the Capitol grounds get dirty and run down, they also treated our constitutional guardrails like they were an option. Physical decay and institutional decay are connected, and both show a loss of real stewardship. Again, this is not about left or right. Character shows up in the maintenance. Whether you leave things better than you found them, because anybody can turn their back, tear stuff down, let it rot. But leading is quieter. It's understanding that we're just temporary caretakers of something much older and bigger than ourselves. These changes truly matter. These improvements, they matter. When a president looks on the reflecting pool and he wants it to shine, when he wants the National Mall to feel majestic again, he's saying something important. This country is not just worth celebrating, it's worth taking care of. And our institutions are worth defending. Our history and our inheritance are worth honoring. And so after seeing this neglect for so long, isn't it refreshing to see leadership that gets stewardship again? Good leaders don't just hold office, they protect what was handed to them so that the next generation gets something stronger and better, not broken and forgotten. This is a very special place we're celebrating this year, and sadly, far too few people say so out loud, and we should. This is a very special place we're celebrating. And I, for one, am very glad we have a president who believes that too. Back to the White House and the White House podium yesterday. Dr. Oz, one of the president's chief quality communicators out there, talking about some big advancements in the area of prescription drugs. This is something that you hear a lot about when you're talking about costs out there. How do you rein them in? For seniors, it's the prescription drug costs out there. And they have this program called Trump RX, where they're adding to the roster more drugs coming in at a cheaper rate through the website trumprx.gov. Here's Dr. Oz explaining that yesterday in clip 206.
I got an announcement that today we are adding 160 more drugs to this site. Now, the site already has 700 or so or 600 or so drugs, so it's going to take it over 750 total. but that is an important number for other reasons. It means that 4 out of 5 medications that are picked up by Americans going into that same drugstore that I mentioned earlier now have the opportunity to double check that the price they're getting in that drugstore, wherever they're buying it from, is the best price out there. So it's a transparency site. It gives everybody the ability to make important decisions about medications they're purchasing with full knowledge of what the cost of those medications are. And that's important because transparency drives cost-effective changes in how we procure and consume products. You would never buy a car without knowing the cost of the car. Some of these medications cost what a car costs. And so these are important assets for the American people to have.
Yeah, that's an important thing that, again, this president prioritizes. And speaking of health and doctors generally, Dr. Oz was asked that question that the press is obsessed with. They just can't stand President Trump's constant stamina, his ability to be up at all hours. They're convinced, and they need somebody to satisfy their lust that President Trump has got to be some sort of wild-eyed crazy person who's losing his mind. That can be the only explanation in their view. And so Dr. Oz, the latest medical professional to take to the podium where the press is insistent that he tell them, will you, sir, confirm what we believe, again, this Trump derangement syndrome, that President Trump is in fact a lunatic and in bad shape? Come on, tell us. Here's what Dr. Oz said.
President's supposed to have one a year.
Yeah, so I actually have talked to the president about what he's sent to all of you. And I think it's just a routine, regular exam. You remember I had the president on my show 10 years ago, and he also presented records. And at the time, I was stunned at how well he was doing, because so many of these numbers naturally over time will start going in the wrong direction. But if you look at these records, they're spectacular. You know, his cholesterol, his blood pressure, all the numbers are starting in excellent parameters. His ability, and listen, I work with him frequently. Many of you get to see him almost every day. That amount of energy and that amount of mental acuity does not exist in a vacuum. You have to have a vessel to carry it. And the president has unique ability to just keep going at all hours of the day with remarkable strength.
And it drives him crazy. Because he likes Diet Cokes and he likes McDonald's. I think that same medical report called him obese or something to that effect. And they think, well, that's got to mean bad things. And Dr. Oz, as well as Ronnie Jackson, the White House doctor before Dr. Oz, said, look, his cholesterol and everything else, he's fine. Yeah, I mean, he's a little paunchy. He probably shouldn't eat as much McDonald's as he does, but he doesn't have cholesterol problems or heart problems or anything else. And they just don't want to believe it. But again, that's, as we let off the show today, that's the Trump derangement syndrome. They are fixated on trying to find something that will undo him. And he's the Energizer Bunny. There is no stopping the guy. He has boundless, endless energy. And he just keeps plugging along, McDonald's and all. And it drives him nuts. Speaking of doctors, I'm sorry. I know it's unimportant. And there's probably nobody that cares about this at all. I'm just enjoying it. So will you bear with me as Dr. Jill continues her book tour? This is the most insufferable woman in many ways, but in another way, it's quite enjoyable because this actually is jaw-dropping. Again, the gaslighting from the left is remarkable. They can look you right in the eye and say these things and mean it and come off as sincere and serious. Over there at MS Now, formerly MSNBC, give me number 202 here. Asking the former First Lady if Joe Biden had in fact stayed and run and won a second term. Listen to this remarkable answer from Dr. Jill, the former First Lady.
The diagnosis came in May of 2025, and considering what the president's health is now, had he continued his reelection bid, had he been elected again, would he have been able to serve as president? Would he have had to resign?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
The diagnosis.
Now, again, normal people would have followed up with, and see, in this, I play that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's pretty amazing to hear the woman closest to the former president say that she's not really aware of whether his health was strong enough for him to continue a job that he clearly wanted to continue doing. And she just confessed that she wasn't sure that he was up to it anyway. And yet she pushed. And remember, we've already talked about she was watching the debate and thought he was having a stroke and then ran him out to the Waffle House and screeched that he did such a good job and he answered every question. This woman is either soulless, a sociopath, all of the above. I don't know what you want to call this, but put that up against what I just played for you with Dr. Oz. They just demand to know what's wrong with Donald Trump because they don't like the way he governs. So there's got to be something wrong with him. And these medical people say, look, I've looked at all his charts and everything. Okay, he shouldn't eat as much McDonald's, but he's in relatively good shape otherwise. They won't take that as an answer at all. They have badgered for 10 years about Donald Trump's health. Here's a woman, the former first lady, married to the guy we were all pretending was president just a couple of years ago. And when asked, he really wanted this job for another term, could he have done it? And she says, I don't know. I'm not sure. Beg your pardon? Can you imagine if Dr. Oz had answered the question yesterday about Donald Trump? Yeah, I looked over his charts and I don't know. Folks, had to be a news story for the rest of the year to the midterms. Anyway, you get this. This came up about her credentials. You know, she loves to remind everybody that she's a doctor in the third clip here.
And he'd given so much of himself, and to see you even saying, like, I thought he was having a medical episode, I was concerned. Was there any part of you that went into protection mode of like, Joe, you can't keep doing this. Like, they're taking so much from you.
But the doctors told me he was fine. I'm not a doctor. I mean, I am a doctor.
Yes, you are a doctor. And he'd give.
For those of you who only listen to this show, you can't hear the strain from my eyeballs rolling back into my head as far as I can possibly roll them. I mean, I am a doctor. She always wants any opportunity to point that out. I mean, you ever met anybody that got their doctorate in something that's not medicine and insists, Aaron, you know anybody, you don't have to name names. Do you know anybody that has their doctorate and insists they be called doctor? Have you ever met anybody like that?
No.
Yeah, I have met people like that before, but they're pretty rare. And I know some really smart people who have doctor in front of their name if they wanted to whip it out. And maybe it says that on their door or on their business card or something. But they don't introduce themselves as, hello, I'm doctor. Now, others of their colleagues will introduce them as doctor because they appreciate, you know, what it took to go through the academic process of becoming doctor or whatever. That's fine. But anytime anybody takes the opportunity to say, well, I am a doctor of education, by the way, that's what she is, a doctor of education, supposedly. But nevertheless, she says, and again, whoever the lady is on The View, one of those hens, says something to the effect of, didn't you, I mean, at any point think maybe about, if you were concerned about his health? Now she's saying, she told the lady on CBS last week, she thought he was having a stroke. She was deeply concerned. Then in this interview, when she's asked, well, if you were so concerned, why didn't you? She said, well, the doctor said he was fine. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I mean, I am a doctor, but I don't know. I just feel this is important to remember where we were and always remember the healthy dose of gaslighting the Democrats dispense on a regular basis. A little more on the Kamala Harris choice from Dr. Jill in our first clip here. Why Kamala was chosen, and Joe chose Kamala to replace him, right?
Joe and Kamala, me, Doug, I thought we were a great team. We chose Kamala, or Joe chose Kamala to be VP. And so we were supportive of her. And look, when Joe got out, he handed over the reins to Kamala. He had full confidence in her. I went out on the road a lot for Kamala. And honestly, I truly believed she was going to win. Joe and Kamala.
You heard my show Monday, if you're a regular viewer. I gave you what I believe was real about that partnership from hell. And I think she was always the heir apparent to the power. The husk was merely a potted plant and a placeholder to bridge the divide from a destructive, chaotic first term that the Democrats tried to destroy President Trump. And then the country was sold this idea that we needed someone normal. And so they dragged out the old bones of the 5-decade-long public servant Joe Biden to make everybody feel like grandpa, like a comfortable old blanket, was available to bridge the divide and make everything normal again. Of course, it was just Obama for a third term. That's all it ended up being. And Kamala Harris was assigned to him to eventually ascend to power. She was never chosen. And again, as I told you, Joe Biden didn't want to go. He decided he wanted to stay. And that's ultimately why they decided to embarrass him on the public stage, exploit his frailty, finally show the country that he wasn't able to lead, and install her. None of that, thankfully, went according to plan. By the way, one more thing about the Bidens, and then I will move off this. I know you say, why are you spending so much time on these people? Because it wasn't too long ago that we pretended they were the first family. That's why. We have to learn. You know, it's a lie just like the lie that Barack Obama was this great unifier. I mean, how many times did you hear, if you were around and voting in 2004 or 2008, when Barack Obama was first elected? And then again, how many times did you hear no red states, no blue states, just the United States? He was going to be the great healer and the great uniter. And people bought it. Whites in particular. Lord almighty. Liberal whites, the worst. The same people that wear masks today. They genuinely believed this guy was going to be some great healer. He turned out to be the most destructive and divisive president this country has ever known. It was a Trojan horse. Just like this dumb old man that we were pretending was president. Trojan horse. Same deal. Radical agenda, masked as something else entirely. So these people were just given power not too long ago. We got to be very careful as we head into the fall that people like these do not dupe us again, like James Tallarico, like Graham Plattner, like the preacher in Kansas, Adam Hamilton. These are Trojan horses. They are wolves in sheep's clothing. If you don't like left-wing politics, if you don't like a progressive agenda, you can't fall for the rope-a-dope from these Democrats. And in fact, our own producer, Aaron, has a theory on what's going on up in Maine. I'm going to get into that in just a minute. But just one last one here. How loathsome are these hillbilly Bidens? They won't even claim the children they produce. Hunter Biden, you know, has 2 children. He has one he claims and then one he doesn't that he had with a stripper he impregnated. You might remember that story. They don't claim her. The Bidens don't claim her. Need proof? Give me number 4.
And that's
Hunter's
why
doing well.
Hunter is, oh my gosh, Hunter is doing so great. And he's sober. He has a beautiful child. I mean, yes. Thank you. Whose name Bo? He named his son after Bo, and Bo named his son after Hunter. So, yeah, just shows the bond.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the book is spectacular.
Thank
And
you.
so our thanks to Jill Biden, the new book.
I don't have anything more to say about it other than if you choose to continue to believe that tripe after all the country's been through, after the Hunter Biden laptop, the crack pipes and the whole bit, that he is, the brothers. Folks, he literally was screwing around with his brother's wife. I mean, if Jerry Springer still had a show, if he were still alive and still had a show, the Bidens might be too exceptional a storyline for Jerry Springer. That's how kind of objectionable and debauched the Biden family is. All right, but I digress. Let's turn to some headlines. The New York Democrats are now looking at redistricting, and I suspect it's going to go the same way that it went for Virginia. New York Democrats announced this week that they're going to introduce a redistricting measure that could add 4 House seats to the party's delegation in 2028. after they failed to redraw voting districts earlier this year. So they're going to try it again. Meanwhile, yesterday, the Supreme Court has cleared the way for Alabama to use the congressional map that they drew up. Why is this important? Because there is a constitutional way to draw congressional boundaries and one that violates the Constitution. And the Supreme Court does not typically get involved in the way states govern their elections unless they clearly violate the Constitution. And in Louisiana's case, and now the opposition in Alabama's case, the Supreme Court felt they had to step in and say something, and they declared that the Alabama Republicans could move forward in removing the state's majority black congressional district for the midterms, handing the party a pickup opportunity in an apparent 6-3 vote. Alabama chastised a lower court for keeping its map blocked, insisting it should move ahead in the wake of the Supreme Court narrowing the Voting Rights Act. Justice's emergency order allows Republicans to do so over the objection of black voters, with a capital B, and other challengers who contended the design should be halted for an independent reason, and it was too late for the Supreme Court to intervene. The Supreme Court issued an opinion on this and said, while federal courts should not impose changes close to an election, states are free to decide for themselves whether the last-minute changes to an election are in their best interests. So again, keeping consistent here, the Supreme Court is saying, and this is just important to know for all of us, that there is a constitutional process to change the rules for your election, and states have the right to change the rules for any election they'd like. And you have to know that, and you have to know where you live. Hear me when I say this. Your state legislature, your state representatives and state senators and your governor have the right, as long as they adhere to the Constitution, to change the rules and the boundaries on elections at any point, as long as it falls within the framework of the Constitution. Here's what doesn't fall within the framework of the Constitution: drawing congressional boundaries based on race. That is not a states' rights issue. That is a violation of the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the United States forbids states from racial gerrymandering. So Alabama tried to do away with it, and people stepped in and said, you can't do away with it. And the Supreme Court had to step in and say, yes, actually, Alabama can and should and has the right to do away with it right now. Just like they told Louisiana they had the right to do away with it right now. So that's all good. And there's a Federalist piece, interestingly, about Missouri, who also was engaged in redrawing boundaries, versus Virginia, who engaged in redrawing boundaries and did it incorrectly. The Federalist writes it this way, and I just wanted to share it with you. For those of you who are into the rules on this and get whipped up about gerrymandering and, well, red states do it, why shouldn't blue states get to do it? Because there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. Look, am I saying gerrymandering is right or wrong? I guess we can have a philosophical debate about that later. What I'm talking about is whether it's legal and constitutional. And the answer is, it is legal and it is constitutional as long as you do it within, again, the framework of the Constitution. Now, if you don't like gerrymandering, that's for another discussion. But we know blue states for entire decades have been rigged to favor Democrats and eliminate Republicans entirely. So now Republicans have finally gotten smart and done the same thing in their states, and Democrats are screaming and crying about it while they're losing population. Remember, that's the other key to this. Blue states are hemorrhaging population, which means red states getting redder, more populated, which means they'll get more representation, and these blue states will shrink in representation because they're losing population. Democrats have a perfect storm coming. They're not allowed to gerrymander due to race, and they're losing population. Democrats know this is bad, so they're trying their best. They tried it in New York, and the court said no. They tried it in Virginia, and the court said no. The Federalist writes it this way: what Missouri Republicans got right and Virginia Democrats got wrong in redistricting. It was a gruesome month for Democrats in the 2026 redistricting war. Virginia Democrats' effort to create a heavily Democrat-favored congressional gerrymander crashed and burned with losses at both the Virginia Supreme Court and the United States Supreme Court. Between those rulings, though, the Missouri Supreme Court slapped down an attempt to overturn a duly elected and enacted congressional map drawn up by representatives in Missouri. And that may net Republicans an additional congressional seat. Why the two are ostensibly different? Redistricting criteria are primarily set by state election law. And while Missouri Republicans followed their laws, Virginia Democrats ignored their state's constitution. It's that simple. If you want to read in more detail each case, do you want to read why at the same time Missouri was doing what Virginia was doing, why Missouri was upheld and Virginia was not? Read this Federalist piece. If this sort of thing interests you, read it so that you understand the next time somebody brings up gerrymandering and how outrageous it is. The Supreme Court clearly just favors red states and not blue states doing it. No. Blue states can, have, do gerrymander, but they have to adhere to the Constitution to do it. And the red states are. Speaking of red states, Florida's legislature has okayed Ron DeSantis's plan to let voters decide whether to end property taxes this year. That's huge. As if Florida hadn't already been turning red, look at what could be coming down the pike for the midterms. Florida voters will get the chance in November to make the Sunshine State the first in the nation to end property tax. The legislature voted yesterday to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot that would slash property taxes for many homeowners and eventually eliminate them completely. If the ballot measure is approved by 60% of the voters, the threshold required for constitutional amendments in Florida, residential homeowners will save thousands of dollars on their property tax bills and may well avoid paying taxes entirely. I have a friend who's retired in Florida, tells me he will save approximately, I believe he said $3,200 to $3,500 a year if his property taxes are slashed. And that's just his portion of it. He shares a property with his brother. So that would be a remarkable savings to him. Meanwhile, just one more thing, talking about ballots and ballot initiatives on individual states. There's a group called Americans for Public Trust filing a complaint with the Attorney General of Missouri, who is a stellar individual. Catherine Hanaway is her name. The ACLU Foundation allegedly has violated Missouri's Foreign Influence in Ballot Measures Act. The ACLU Foundation contributed $2 million to a ballot measure committee through, although it receives foreign donations itself. So pay attention to this. It's an important story inside Missouri. And I know those of you who live outside the state of Missouri and maybe outside the heartland, you say, well, it's kind of a, story specific to Missouri, so I'm not particularly interested. No, it actually is a big deal. Because this case, if the Attorney General is successful in fighting it, this is something that everybody in every state should be paying attention to. When things go on the ballot, amendments to your Constitution or other things go on the ballot, and you start to see ads from various outside groups saying yes or no to certain ballot initiatives or amendments or what have you, who are they? Who's funding those campaigns? Well, in Missouri's case, the ACLU Foundation is taking in foreign money. And the complainant says Missouri's law is clear. Foreign money is banned from directly or indirectly influencing ballot measure campaigns. That's pretty easy to understand. It's pretty critical to understand. And so we hope that the Attorney General in Missouri is successful in this fight. I suspect that she will be. It's worth paying close attention to. Also worth paying close attention to, the Graham Plattner Susan Collins race in Maine. Now, our own producer of this show here at the Heartlander, Aaron Baucus, says to me before the show, he goes, Stigall, I've been thinking about this Graham Plattner. And I said, oh, you have? What do you mean? What have you been thinking about? He said, well, it seems to me, is it possible that this guy, as outrageous as we know he is, the Nazi tattoo, the women, the oversexed nature, the whole thing, he's a really bad guy. It's pretty clear. Even the Democrats can't really defend him, and yet they are. Do you think they know they have no intention of getting him across the finish line? Do you think they know that ultimately he has no shot, and that Susan Collins is really not that big a deal to them because ultimately she's kind of a squish and oftentimes will vote with them anyway. So getting rid of Susan Collins isn't really an objective. Graham Plattner's really not somebody they're interested in saving. Our producer Aaron's theory is Graham Plattner is nothing but a great big distraction so that everyone will channel all their energy on him and not talk about the likes of a James Tallarico, Beto with a Bible, or Adam Hamilton in Kansas, another Beto with a Bible. Is this a big distraction from their own failures? They want to get everybody talking about Graham Plattner. I love the theory, Aaron. I think that's sound reasoning. So Graham Plattner went to the Senate to meet with some of these Senate Democrats yesterday so that they could have a full vetting. And here's what they rolled out with after talking with the Nazi-tattooed, oversexed Graham Plattner. Chuck Schumer up first.
I met with Graham Plattner today. We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate. Yes.
So you're saying that Janet Mills, your preferred candidate, there's been rattlings that she should get back in. You're standing behind Graham Plattner, to be clear here?
We're going to beat Susan
With
Collins
Graham Plattner.
and take back the Senate.
With Plattner.
Yes.
If Democrats sticking behind Graham Plattner, does that hurt their credibility in attacking Ken Paxton?
We're going to take back, we're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate. Any other subject you got? Any other subject? Yes, yes, you right there.
Do you believe that Janet Mills should unsuspend her campaign?
We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate. Last one.
You have not said if you're still endorsing Graham Plattner. Are you still supporting Graham Plattner?
As I said, I endorsed Graham Plattner. We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate. Thank you.
All right, Aaron. That clip is what inspired you to believe that this is all just a big distraction, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And you say that why?
He'd rather just parrot that stupid response than think critically about anything else.
I think it's sound reasoning. Aaron was driven to distraction with that clip. I'll hear it. Tim Kaine was asked about it too. This is the guy that for half a second we pretended was actually going to be a vice president with Hillary Clinton, Granny Crooked Hacker. Oof, this guy. Listen to him. Spin Graham Plattner. Again, the Nazi tattoo for 12 years on his chest, Graham Plattner, the Democrats defending or trying to avoid talking about anyway.
Do you think, considering everything on the line, control of the Senate that could come down to that race in Maine, is he the right person for Democrats to put forward?
Casey, here's my thought about this. I almost never get involved in primaries outside of Virginia because I think Maine Democrats should pick their candidates, and I don't think national
but we're pretty
figures,
far down on the primary road here.
Well, yeah, there's 3 candidates on the ballot next week. And I am not going to say a word that will tilt it one way or another. Maine Democrats are going to make the decision. Once they make the decision, I may have some things to say about it. But I'm not going to say anything now because Maine Democrats need to pick who they think would be their best representative.
Do you?
I'm not going to say anything about it now. I have no comment on the Nazi tattoo. Well, there's one Democrat, anyway, for now. I don't think they'll tolerate him being a Democrat much longer. And I know they're actively trying to figure out how to railroad him in Pennsylvania politics. And that's the hooded John Fetterman, who was not afraid to step forward yesterday. He was the only Democrat who was not afraid to step forward and say, I think we could do better than the Nazi tattoo guy. Just saying.
What kind of a creeper has been on a decade on a platform like Kick and send a dozen explicit kinds of messages and who knows what else?
Would it be better for Democrats if he was not the candidate here?
All I'm saying, it's like, when I was growing up, if someone had a clear Nazi tattoo on them, you probably could conclude that there's a Nazi sympathizer. How, at some point, you're going to continue to defend that or dismiss that.
Now, I asked Fetterman how he feels about Janet Mills, who is the Democratic governor who has suspended her campaign. He talked up her candidacy. Of course, Mills has suspended her campaign, but she did make comments yesterday reminding voters that she is still on the ballot. And the person who recruited her in that race, Jake, of course, was.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. What kind of creeper, says John Fetterman. Of course, he's right. He's the only one willing to say it. Like they can't do better than that. Fine, whatever. Democrats, you have a race. Go ahead, put somebody up against Susan Collins. But for heaven's sakes, you can't do better than Graham Plattner? And the answer may be no. Maybe they can't. Paul Krugman, formerly of the New York Times, literally employed by that place for over 20 years. So we have an actual Nazi, a guy with a 12-year Nazi tattoo on his chest. Democrats won't denounce. He continues to believe the real Nazis are those of us who supported President Trump, and of course, President Trump himself. Paul Krugman.
We need to defang Trump as much as possible and make sure that neither he nor anybody who follows in his footsteps has power after the next two elections. But beyond that, we really need to do a thorough purging of the United States. We need a demogrification, and that is, I'm not going over the top by using a word that's very similar to the denazification that we pursued successfully after World War II in Germany. We need to.
Yeah. He's talking about those of us who voted for Donald Trump. We need to purge the country of those of us who are MAGA, make America great again. We need again, this goes back to my open today on today's show. We need to purge this country of people who want to make it great again, who believe that this country is special and worth preserving. Guys like Paul Krugman say we got to do something about them. Think of that messaging. That's what the Democrats are running on. Meanwhile, yesterday, President Trump, following an executive order signed by him in May related to banking, the president said bank accounts that are being used to enable illegals to defraud the United States will be shut down. Illegal immigrants and foreign fraudsters steal billions a year from the American taxpayer. As part of my administration's historic effort to end fraud and reverse mass illegal immigration, I recently signed a powerful new executive order, which will be led by the Treasury to stop banks, credit cards, and financial institutions from being used to facilitate human smuggling, drug trafficking, illegal immigration, and the criminal cartels who orchestrate these activities. Access to our nation's financial systems must be limited to those who have a legal right to be here and who are engaged in lawful and legitimate commerce. Bank accounts being used to enable illegal immigration or to use or to store the welfare received by illegal aliens will be shut down. Funds will ultimately face impoundment and seizure so they can be returned to the taxpayers. It is not ludicrous, but profoundly dangerous that any illegal alien can simply present a blue state driver's license or Biden border document and have unrestricted access to the U.S. financial system. Now, does that sound dangerous to you? Or does that sound like prudent leadership protecting the sovereignty of the United States and the taxpayer? Doesn't sound like Nazism to me. Quite the opposite, as a matter of fact. It's a defense of the country and defense of you as a taxpayer. Theft of your tax dollars. Taxation, which, by the way, I'm sure many of you believe is theft unto itself by the government. But nevertheless, this is exactly the Fraud Doesn't Pay Act, something that I would love to introduce were I king or member of Congress. This not only should be clawed back, but financial institutions. Look, heaven knows when Democrats have been in charge, they have forced financial institutions into all of that stupid, those environmental rules and regs. The acronym escapes me now. It's not DEI. It was another one. Well, at any rate, it was, and I explained it here, I think not too terribly long ago. It was big investment houses leaning on lenders to say they had to insist that on down the line, any money that was distributed to companies, any transactions that were going on inside of companies had to meet green energy initiatives or DEI hiring practices and the like. Environmental social justice, that's what it was. ESG, that was the act. ESG, environmental social governance. Sorry, I knew I'd get there. Trying to remember all these. Environmental social governance, look it up. The left tried to muscle lending institutions for the longest time to insist that everyone behave properly. they were super green, that they had the proper number of brown, black, Asian, gay, trans people on their staffs, or else the lending institution couldn't do transactions with said company. I mean, that's always been the left's MO. Here, Donald Trump says financial institutions cannot do financial transactions with illegals, smuggling human beings, sex trafficking, and the like. I mean, which sounds like the decent use of executive power and which sounds like the troubling Nazi all-control move, the power move, the totalitarian move from the top. Here again, they always project and tell you who they are. In trying to define us and President Trump, they're actually telling you who they are. President Trump is deregulating and trying to protect people. The left, when they are in control, they're trying to, that's just it, control everyone from the top down. That's the way they want it. Speaking of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's Pride Month. Blessings to all of you who celebrate. Pride organizations are adjusting to operating without longtime sponsors again after struggling to secure big brand support for their annual events. This is a very interesting shift in recent years. Major names like Marriott, L'Oreal, and Red Bull continue to serve as top-level backers. Some Pride organizations say they're still in negotiations with other potential sponsors, but other marketers have reduced their commitments or opted out entirely, and most brands that withdrew funding in 2025 have not come back at the same level, if at all. Sponsors are just a little bit reluctant, says Patty Hearn, executive director of Seattle Pride. Departing sponsors have provided a range of reasons, including economic instability and the Trump administration's moves against diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Several federal agencies also typically sponsor Capitol Pride's annual activities, but all stepped back this year and haven't returned. A federal healthcare provider last year told organizers at a Pride event in Indiana that it couldn't participate due to changes in the approval processes and organizational guidance related to executive orders. The White House has referred inquiries about DEI and Pride to the Office of Management and Budget, responsible for developing and enforcing guidelines for contractors. Pressure on DEI has affected Pride over the U.S. border, too. The organization has an estimated deficit of $800,000, losing several key sponsors last year, including Google and Home Depot. The anti-DEI stuff that we're seeing happening in the United States has trickled up into Canada. Again, this is why Paul Krugman is so desperate to see the demagnification of the country, because the agenda that they have been shoving down our throats for entirely too long and that we've all sort of politely tolerated, it's now being met with a silent majority pushback that is silent no more. And this makes them mad. Over at CBS News, the haughty, H-A-U-G-H-T-Y, Scott Pelley, who likes to chew on the end of his glasses. Aaron, do you know people who do this with their glasses? I have some readers every now and again. I wear them on occasion. Let me show you what Scott Pelley likes to do. And let me ask you, Aaron, when I do this, does this make me look more intelligent? Scott Pelley likes to do this. Have you ever seen people do this with their glasses?
I think so, yeah.
This is meant to make me look extra cerebral and thoughtful. Does it look cerebral and thoughtful?
Yes, I think so.
He loved doing that. His glasses were a prop, and he always loved to take. In interviews on 60 Minutes, he would always. I think it's akin to like a pipe for some people, like a cardigan and a pipe. His glasses were sort of a prop. He always very haughty, very spoke from the bottom jaw. There's a character on Family Guy called Bottom Jaw. It's Scott Pelley. Anyway, so there's new management over there at 60 Minutes and CBS News, and there's been just perpetual firings and layoffs and people quitting in the snit because Barry Weiss, who's running it now, she's hired somebody to come in and run 60 Minutes, and this was Scott Pelley's turf, and he was Well, apparently the new guy who took over managing 60 Minutes, a guy called Nick Bilton is his name. He's the executive producer. He gathers everybody up in a huddle last week at 60 Minutes and says, all right, hey, my name's Nick Bilton and I'm running the show now. Well, Scott Pelley apparently interrupted this guy as soon as he started reading introductory remarks at the meeting. And according to people in attendance, he was accused of murdering 60 Minutes and questioned Bilton's qualifications for the executive producer role. Scott Pelley also spoke with Barry Weiss, CBS News president, Tom, whoever he is, and a human resources representative to discuss the path forward. Pelley said, Bilton in response to Pelley said, your antipathy to the future of this show has come through loud and clear. Your performative display of hostility. I know how much Scott meant to many of you, and I don't say this lightly. I made repeated attempts to have direct conversations with him over the weekend, and this afternoon I tried to find common ground. But Pelley was bounced. Ultimately, they let him go. I don't know if you've ever had a meeting with a new manager when he or she comes in and says, hi, I'm the new boss. I'd like to discuss our way forward and some things I'm thinking. Probably not a good idea to kick off the meeting by saying, you're murdering this organization and you don't have the qualifications to be here. That probably doesn't start your tenure with the new boss off well. The fund, the fraud fund, well, not fraud fund, but the $1.8 billion fund we've been talking about that the government basically settled with Donald Trump after they released his taxes and shouldn't have. This was something that ultimately, I guess, the Senate was going to have to sign off on. There wasn't much of a political appetite for it because it was calling a lot of attention to Trump and his pride. And look, here again, I say the Trump administration has been granted immunity for the taxes that fall under the time now and that have happened in the past. So said another way, basically during President Trump's tenure as president and all of his taxes previously, the IRS can no longer, per the DOJ, have at his taxes, release his taxes, go at him for taxes. They're grandfathering it in at DOJ. Now, some say this is politically troubling. And I'm told that, well, taxpayers aren't going to like that a rich guy is being shielded. He's not. The point is, the federal government has been weaponized against Donald Trump more than maybe just about anybody else. Everybody knows exactly what's in his taxes. The IRS released his taxes illegally to try to topple him in a couple of election cycles. So DOJ simply said, we're no longer going to subject Donald Trump to that kind of treatment ever again. It does not say that Donald Trump cannot be subject to scrutiny in the future. It says nothing about the Trump organization or Donald Trump personally not having a look under the hood after his presidency. It's just an agreement that the government is settling past issues with him. And so they came up with this $1.8 billion fund and as a settlement to President Trump for illegally releasing his taxes. And President Trump said, I want to make a fund for victims, American citizens who have been abused by the government. I've been told this is politically uncomfortable, maybe even for some Republicans. Well, anyway, it came up. These things came up yesterday on Capitol Hill in a hearing. Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, discussed this in clip 212. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, I wanted to ask a few questions about the anti-weaponization fund. We know that the department has agreed to pause this effort until at least June 12th. I wanted to ask what your plans were for the fund after June 12th.
So thank you. So look, we're not moving forward with the fund. You're right that there's a date that in the case in the Eastern District of Virginia in June, but we are not moving forward with the fund, period. The reasons for the fund is something that President Trump talked about for a long time, which is the fact that there were a lot of people in this country who had their government weaponized against them. The reasons for the fund, I think, it remain as important as they were before, but We are not moving forward with the fund.
Not moving forward ever.
Correct.
Oh, there's no more fund then.
Well, to the extent there was a fund, and remember, the fund wasn't set up yet. There were no commissioners named. There was no no claimants brought anything in front of. There was no claims made yet. So yes, we're not moving forward with the fund.
You and associate.
Yeah. However, there is a discussion in the House right now about an anti-weaponization fund amongst House Republicans, and they are those who are wanting to bring it to a vote. There's a guy called Brian Fitzpatrick, total squish in Pennsylvania, who said he plans to force a House vote on his bill to block the Trump administration's anti-weaponization fund. Fitzpatrick, who co-authored the legislation with a Democrat to block the fund, told Anderson Cooper in a statement that the statement from the Justice Department was not satisfactory. We need both a legal avenue here and a statutory legislative avenue. That's what Tom and I have introduced, and that's what we're going to force to the floor. They're looking at spearheading a discharge petition to force a vote on the bill. I think it's a gross abuse of discretion. That's what this is, Fitzpatrick said, referring to the fund. So, you know, we're going to stop this, and we're going to prevent future instances from happening. We have half this country living paycheck to paycheck. They're struggling to meet the most basic needs to govern their households, and we're forced when we're forced on these infrastructure projects and slush funds, that's not the way we should be governing. It's not a slush fund. Again, it is the government making people whole. It has victimized your government that you represent, Mr. Fitzpatrick. You know, you can claim this, oh, I'm trying to represent the people who are struggling. Well, what about the people that were wrongly thrown in prison, Mr. Fitzpatrick, and abused by this government? But here he is, a Republican pretending to be a Republican. And in fact, he's a Democrat, partnering with a Democrat to block President Trump's agenda here. And as for other lunatic, this is the purple-haired weirdo, Rosa DeLauro, yesterday, going at Todd Blanche. And I already tackled this, but this is what the Democrats are trying to make this out to be, that they're giving blanket tax immunity to the entire Trump family for the rest of their lives, which is absurd. But here's how Todd Blanche dealt with it.
An addendum, the second order?
No,
The only thing you're talking about here, so the blanket immunity is not something that you're going to move back on?
It's not blanket immunity. That's not true.
It is.
No, it's not.
Read it. Okay. United States releases, waives, acquits, and forever discharges each of the plaintiffs from and is hereby forever barred and precluded from prosecuting or pursuing any and all claims, counterclaims, causes of actions, appeals, requests for any reliefs. I mean, this is an order from you, but you're not prepared. You are prepared to say that the president and his family will be barred, are immune from. That's a yes.
No, it was not a yes. I had not answered the question. I can't answer if you want me to.
What are you doing with this?
Okay, so there was.
And of course, the text of that will go on to say forever immune from being prosecuted related to the dates specified, which is the part that she leaves out. And Blanche goes on to explain that. But again, they're not interested in that. Something also just fun, because I like watching great communicators shred partisan hacks like Marco Rubio, who went toe-to-toe with Nevada's Democrat Senator Jackie Rosen yesterday in an interesting exchange. Take a listen to this.
You were at a party with President Trump in Miami instead of accompanying Vice President Vance to Pakistan for negotiations.
What party was I at? I was at a party?
It's publicly reported, and there's photos there.
But
In
what
fact,
party?
Steve
No,
Witkoff
but you're going to
and
say that. I'm
Jared
going to answer it. I'm going to answer that
let me
question.
finish
That's an
my
absurd statement.
And
I was not at a
as I
party.
finish my paragraph, he
All right.
can answer.
Because people are going to
In fact,
slander me. I'm going to answer
Steve
it.
Witkoff and Jared Kushner, both of whom were never confirmed by this body to be America's diplomats, accompanied the vice president in the negotiations. Even Iran's foreign minister was not there, yet you were not, was there, excuse me, and you were not. I just feel that's embarrassing for us, and it's embarrassing for you. So, Mr. Secretary, Congress represents the American people. We have the power to confirm who represents America abroad. We confirmed you to be our Secretary of State. We confirmed you to be in the negotiations that are happening. And it's just unthinkable to me that you are missing high stakes negotiations or that you're not involved. It's sad.
Senator Rosen, your
Thank you.
time's up.
Yield back.
But
so let me
Senator Secretary Rubio,
You're
should have the
100%
opportunity to
inaccurate
reply.
and 100% wrong. Here's why. Number one, the Vice President of the United States was there, and he wasn't confirmed by the Senate. He was elected by the American people. Okay, he is the second in line of the presidency of the United States. He was present. Mr. Witkoff is the president's envoy for negotiation for peace deals. Mr. Kushner is a private citizen that serves as an advisor on these functions. They were the team that we sent to Pakistan. I was not at a party. Where I was is next to the president, because in the midst of those negotiations, I was in communications with them. And in fact, I think there is media reporting from that evening on how on multiple occasions I went into a back room, I came back out and spoke to the president and was constantly updating him. On that evening, I spoke to Mr. Kushner and our negotiating team and Mr. Witkoff on at least 6 occasions, including twice on a secure line from the phone they had access to over there. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're just
Senator
making
Rosen,
stuff up.
he has the floor.
I know your
please.
staff wrote up this cute statement for your TikTok video, but it's not true and it's not real. That's not what happened. Okay, I'm the National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. I was co-located with the president in the midst of a high-stakes negotiation so that I could immediately inform him about events occurring halfway around the world. I was where I needed to be at that moment because we had a very capable team on the ground in Pakistan, led by the Vice President of the United States.
I can't do it better than that, so I'll leave it with Secretary Rubio, and that'll do it today from America's Heartland. Hope you'll stay close by subscribing to Heartlander News here on YouTube, and you'll be alerted every time we drop a new show. Be sure to give us a like and comments too if you're so inclined. We're glad to have you along, and we'll see you next time from America's Heartland here on Heartlander News.